Hello again, dudes and dudettes, and welcome back to I Am the Dude Games. So, I have been putting this off for quite some time. I think I finished my Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order series, I want to say after the New Year, shortly after the New Year, and it's already March of 2020. And there's just some Star Wars Battlefront 2 gameplay in the background here while I do my review of Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order here. So I apologize for putting it off for so long. I didn't mean to. I've just been really taking a big hiatus from gaming and not so much streaming as much, but just at regular video content. This video is going to be pretty short because I feel I already made most of my opinions about Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order very clear during most of my playthrough of the game itself. So I'm just going to try to flesh out basically the highlights of my thoughts, both pros and cons of the game itself. This is going to be a short review. First things first. The style of game that Star Wars is, or that Jedi Fallen Order is, I'm not used to playing whatsoever. It's attack, dodge, parry style of swordplay combat from the likes of Dark Souls and Bloodborne, stuff like that. I'm not used to playing that kind of stuff at all. And so this game, I can honestly say, was probably I have to kind of recap some of the more challenging games that I've played in my life. But that had to be one of the toughest video games I've ever played, just because I'm not used to that style of video game. There was a while back I tried doing a series on Neo, which was another Dark Souls fighting style-esque game that had to do with like ninjas and samurais and stuff like that. I tried doing a series on it, and the difficulty ended up proving so tough for me that I couldn't really even progress, and I was getting too frustrated with it, and I just decided that it wasn't worth it for me to do a series on that just because I personally couldn't handle it. And I haven't, to be honest, I haven't even touched that game in my free time since. But I did, considering this was a Star Wars game, you know, I wanted to power through it, obviously, because I love Star Wars, first and foremost. Not really counting any of the Lego Star Wars games. The last one that came out, I think, was Lego Star Wars Force Awakens, and I did a series on that on my channel, and then I think one of the Clone Wars era Lego games, not really counting those. Jedi Fallen Order is the first major, like, single-player action-adventure Star Wars game to come out for console and other platforms since 2010. So 9 years, almost 10 years, almost a decade after Force Unleashed 2, Jedi Fallen Order came out, and that's why I, as well as so many others, were very, very excited to play it because of that aspect. And so, as far as how fluid the story and the combat of the game felt, and especially for something that I'm not, used to at all, I really have no complaints. The game itself was phenomenal. There's no DLC for this game, at least not yet. So it was an incredibly self-contained game and an incredibly self-contained plot and story within the post-Clone Wars era, so after the Empire has essentially taken over, but before the Death Star is complete. The story focuses around Cal, a young Padawan, young Jedi Padawan who survived the Emperor's purge, you know, at the behest of his master dying, unfortunately, and he got stranded on that salvage planet. And it almost felt like, aside from the combat, it almost felt like I was playing like an Uncharted game, but about Star Wars and about Jedi. That's how it felt. It was very cinematic. The game itself was gorgeous. Every part of the game itself was beautiful and challenging, and just the game forced me, and I'm pretty sure it forced a lot of players to really keep pushing themselves to their limits to try and, you know, keep doing better every time throughout each scenario. And I absolutely loved the game from start to finish. And considering the length of the game, now I wish the game could have been a little bit longer. I wish they could have done a little bit more. The story itself is maybe, I mean, if I played it from start to finish without getting a whole lot of the collectibles and stuff and a lot of the power-ups, the whole plot and story, the whole game from start to finish was probably between 10 and 16 hours long. At the most. So if you go through each world that has, you know, collectibles and power-ups, and if you literally unlock all the power-ups and all the upgrades and every collectible piece, skins and all that for Cal and BD1 and the lightsaber, then you're probably looking at 20 plus hours. So there were only 6 worlds, 6 planets available in the game. The largest of which had the most collectibles was definitely Zepho, with all of the Zepho tombs that you have to explore through the main campaign, as well as other open world exploration and collectibles. Zepho had the most to offer and explore, and that was a lot of fun and very, very challenging to try and take on. Kashyyyk, I think, was probably the second most challenging, as well as had, you know, the most to offer as far as collectibles were concerned. As far as the character of like BD1 and having like health packs and stuff like that, I absolutely loved BD1's character, and just having a little buddy droid on my back to keep me company, and also be very crucial to the function and flow of combat and everything. That was just very, very, very clever and very entertaining as well. So other than I wish the plot, the story could have been just a little bit longer and maybe offered a little bit more, because it was very focused. It was very focused on Cal's story, but also the story of I forget her name, the main companion that it was Breeze and it was Seer. Seer and her Padawan's backstory, and going into their backstory briefly that led to them meeting Cal and all that. It's a very focused story, focused mainly on, you know, the main characters. I wish there maybe were a few more boss fights. I wish I had a little bit more one-on-one time with Vader at the very end of it, but then again, I'm only a Padawan, just now fully realizing the near summit of his Jedi powers, and Vader is just a mad powerhouse Sith, so that scenario probably carried out as it was supposed to, you know, but I'm trying to think of what else I could commend the game on. The game definitely rewards you very much so for timing your attacks, as well as choosing when to block and parry. Depending on how good you can get with that, the game rewards you very, very nicely in combat, but also punishes you very heavily, especially if you're being surrounded and bombarded with enemies. I personally had to go to Kashyyyk and do an XP farm for at least a day or two, just to unlock all of my skill points, so that way I could, or get myself enough skill points so that way I could unlock all of Cal's abilities, aside from the ones I hadn't already obtained throughout the main story. So I did an XP farm on Kashyyyk, and I did that and kind of powered up some, and then went and hunted down most of the other Force and Life Bar power-ups, as well as Stim canister upgrades for BD1. And once you obtain most to all of the upgrades and power-ups and stuff in the game, that's when it starts to get a little bit easier. Like, you have a little bit more wiggle room with your life bar and all that stuff, and your Force bar. You're able to do more damage and take on more, as it were. So the only main complaint that I have about this game, and I've never had this issue with any other game, I don't know if this issue has been fixed fully yet or not. I'm assuming it hasn't been since I finished the game. When you launch a highly anticipated game like this, a game that people are going to spend countless hours playing, even after they've already beaten the story, they're going to go back, they're going to replay it, even if there's not a New Game Plus mode. The main thing that bogged down the game, the story, the combat, just all of the gameplay and everything about the game itself, the one thing that really just bogged down the game, the gameplay, and a lot of the enjoyment of the game itself was the countless graphical errors that occurred, textures not loading in properly, entire environments in certain areas, in certain rooms, not even loading, some enemies not even loading in, and the game ultimately just kind of like freezing to load whenever I'm just running around or even in combat. You know, I would expect these kind of errors and these kind of I would expect that kind of stuff from like online games, like online MMOs and like first-person shooters, just online game multiplayer games, is what I would kind of expect that from, like game freezes, crashes, texture and graphical errors, that kind of stuff. I would expect that of those kinds of games, but a single-player action-adventure game for current-gen console, come on. You know, if it probably, I don't know if it was just an issue that they were having in game development and decided to just release the game as it was regardless. But I feel like if they knew they were having these issues before they even released the game, they probably would have spent a little bit more time working on it. So I don't exactly know what the full scope of the problem was with all the graphical bugs and freezes and crashes that this game had from launch up until, you know, now, essentially. But I feel like if the developers knew they were having these kind of issues with the game, they should have spent a little bit more time working it out, polishing the game fully so that way they wouldn't have any of these issues, so that way it wouldn't bog down gameplay, it wouldn't distract or take away from the attention of the story or the combat at all. That's the biggest issue I had with this game, and it really does suck because as a diehard Star Wars fan and as a diehard gamer, I was like down ready to play this game with a fiery passion. And I did the series, and I loved the game. But when you have something that's so good that people love, that you know people will love, and that people will genuinely enjoy, and you watch them play it and you see how much they enjoy it, that's such a great feeling because you're watching people enjoy something you've created. But to then have that thing that you made for others be just that little bit tarnished by something as trivial as, you know, graphical errors and your game just not like running properly the way it should, it really does suck. because it wasn't just me that was having these issues. It was everyone that bought the game, either digitally or physically. I don't know if digital copies of the game were having these issues. I'm assuming they would. I'm assuming they were. But that's just really too bad. Like, if they had spent a little bit more time in development, like fully polished the game to make sure that it wouldn't have had any of these issues, then the game essentially would have been perfect the way it was. And it would have been that much more enjoyable. I really doubt that anyone would have had many complaints about it. So, that's essentially it. That's really the biggest problem I had with the game, and I'm sure a lot of other people would agree with me on that. But other than that, the game was a huge success. I really do hope they come out with some DLC or even a new game plus. I would definitely replay the game. There's a few things that I'd still have to probably go through and try to get all the trophies just 100% the game if I really wanted to. So, but all in all, I give the game a solid 9 out of 10. It's one of the best games I've played, and it's definitely one of the most challenging games that I've played, especially that final boss fight. So, that I had against Trilla. I was genuinely wowed. I was genuinely shocked and impressed by every aspect of this game. It challenged me in ways that I never expected, and I was eager to overcome. I was eager to overcome those challenges and get better, and actually do well and show off some sweet skills. So I had a lot of fun, and I'm greatly looking forward to other video games on this channel. In the coming weeks, while we're kind of in quarantine here, due to coronavirus, until Final Fantasy VII Remake releases in April. So far, that game hasn't been postponed. It's still being released, as far as I know. I have it fully pre-ordered, and I'm planning on doing a series on that as soon as it launches. But until then, just to try to put some content on my channel. Aside from this review, I'm seriously considering starting a series on Uncharted Nathan Drake collection, starting with Drake's Fortune, the very first game in the Uncharted series. My very first series on this channel was Uncharted 4, Thief's End. And I did that as a live stream walkthrough series. Each video was between 1.5 hours to 2.5 hours long. I was limited to the technology that I had access to at that time, so streaming from PS4 was the only thing I could do. But suffice it to say, more than a few graphical issues there, frame cutting in and out and stuff like that. Aside from a few issues with that series, that was the very first series I did on my channel, and so I'm very excited to actually be starting the rest of the Uncharted games. So I'm going to do that over the course of the next few days. I'm going to be starting the rest of the Uncharted games for you guys to enjoy. Even though it's an older game, I still love it. So you guys can expect that very, very soon. Until then, though, my name is I'm the Dude 5. This is I'm the Dude Games. So please subscribe to my channel and click that bell icon for notifications. Like this video as well as any others of mine that you may enjoy. As always, stay classy, and I will see you all out there.